Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Julie Chrisley appeals court vacates sentencing, going home soon. Julie Chrisley was incorrectly sentenced for losses that she was accused of. That is the news that Chrisley Knows Best fans heard after Savannah Chrisley updated on the outcome of the oral appeal for Todd Chrisley and his wife. The news arrived on Friday, June 21. So, she will be remanded back to the district court for an amendment to her sentence and possibly to her record. Julie Chrisley will likely go home sooner rather than later. Many people believe that Todd Chrisley and his wife are innocent. Meanwhile, even those who don't like them seemed a bit taken aback at the length of the sentences. The news about the appeal court is good news. Rachel, the mom of Savannah Chrisley, ended up being charged with more offenses than her husband. Between them, they currently served their original sentence of a combined 19 years. Julie Chrisley's sentence had been vacated, per Channel 2. The article cited court documents as saying, Julie Chrisley served over a year in a Kentucky facility, and according to her daughter, prison conditions are not good. At one stage, Savannah mentioned that poison snakes had access to the prison. Strip searches were also alleged to have happened. Even with 2 years shaved off her original 7-year sentence, staying behind bars for a long time seemed shocking, especially as she raised minor children, Chloe and Grayson. What does it mean to vacate a sentence? According to Angus Lee Law Firm, when a court vacates a sentence, it means that a person might have been incorrectly sentenced. In Julie's case, it seems that the court sentenced her harshly without the appeal judges being able to find the evidence to back up her sentence. Notably, a person can be retried, but it usually leads to reduced time or an expunging of the record. That doesn't necessarily mean that Savannah Chrisley's mom gets to go home this week. The appeals court referred the case back to the district court. Originally, AP reported that Todd and Julie were found guilty of conspiring to defraud the IRS in tax evasion, and Julie Chrisley was convicted of wire fraud and obstruction of justice. But it seems she will likely get home a lot sooner than previously thought. Chrisley Knows Best fans respond, you need to know that Todd Chrisley was not found innocent of anything, and for now, his sentence will remain unchanged. However, fans of the couple seem thrilled for Julie, and they praised Savannah Chrisley for fighting for her parents. Here are some of their thoughts. So thankful that they have a persistent daughter like you fighting for their release. Praise God. Bring Julie and Todd home. Your parents will forever be grateful to you for fighting for them. It sounds like Julie should never have gone to prison in the first place. Thank goodness, praying she gets released in the near future. This is a big win. One at a time, and they will both be home sooner rather than later. Julie Chrisley sat in her prison cell, thoughts swirling as she tried to process the news. It was a cold, gray morning, much like many others she'd endured over the past year. But this one felt different. There was a whisper of hope hanging in the air, an excitement that had been missing for so long. She'd just been told that the appeals court had vacated her sentencing, and now going home wasn't just a distant dream, it was a very real possibility. She ran her fingers along the edges of the letter she'd received from her attorney, her hands trembling as she reread the words. Every line was a lifeline, a piece of the puzzle she prayed would one day fall into place. This letter represented a bridge back to her family, back to Todd, back to the children she loved fiercely and missed more with each passing day. The news spread like wildfire among the inmates, each with their own reactions, some jealous, others supportive. Julie had grown close to a few women, especially Brenda, a woman who had been her confidant in the hardest moments. Brenda clasped Julie's hands with a wide smile and whispered, "Girl, you're going home. Can you believe it?" Julie smiled back, her eyes welling up. Julie was still trying to keep her emotions in check. Hope could be dangerous in a place like this. She'd heard horror stories of people who believed they'd see the outside world again, only to have their hopes dashed at the last minute. She wouldn't let herself fully believe it until she walked out those doors. Later that night, Julie lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, her mind filled with thoughts of her family. Would they recognize her after all the time that had passed? Would Savannah and Grayson still see her as the mother they'd adored, or would they see her differently now? Would Todd be the same? Her heart ached as she thought of him, imagining his face the day he'd heard the news. She could picture his shock, his joy, the disbelief likely dancing in his eyes. Her thoughts drifted to the last holiday they'd spent together, the quiet moments at the family table, and the laughter shared over her famous sweet potato pie. She missed those evenings, when all that mattered was their togetherness. As the memories enveloped her, she could almost smell the vanilla and cinnamon wafting through the kitchen, see Todd rolling his eyes at her baking, only to sneak bites when he thought no one was looking. The next morning, she woke up before the usual clamor of the prison. She dressed quickly, unable to shake the nerves buzzing in her chest. Her attorney was scheduled to call her today with updates about the vacated sentence and to let her know what steps they needed to take next. Standing by the phone, Julie could hardly breathe. Every second stretched into an eternity. Then the phone finally rang, and she clutched the receiver, her heart pounding. "Hello," she whispered, barely able to find her voice. "Julie?" Her lawyer's voice crackled on the line, a familiar and comforting sound. "I have some good news. The court has ruled in our favor on several counts. Your case is going to be reevaluated, and there's a good chance you'll be released within the next few weeks. It's not set in stone, but we're very close." Julie's knees buckled, and she gripped the table in front of her to keep from collapsing. Weeks, just a few more weeks, and she might actually be free. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." After the call, Julie felt lighter than she had in months. When she returned to her cell, she found Brenda waiting. "What'd he say?" Brenda asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. Julie's smile was brighter than the cold fluorescent lights above. "It's happening, Brenda, I'm going home." The following days were a whirlwind. Every waking moment was a countdown. Every mundane chore became a reminder that soon, she'd be back with her family. The officers noticed a change in her too. Some of them nodded in understanding, aware of the struggles she'd endured and the quiet resilience she'd maintained. As the final paperwork was filed, Julie thought of Todd, her steady anchor in the storm of their legal battles, how much he had fought for her, how tirelessly he'd worked to clear their names. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and they had so many things to rebuild and repair in their family and in their lives. But none of that mattered in comparison to the sheer joy of being together. Finally, the day arrived. She stood outside the prison gates, feeling the crisp, open air against her face. For the first time in so long, she felt free, not just physically but emotionally. She was free from the chains of despair, from the feeling of helplessness that had haunted her nights. She looked around, her eyes adjusting to the daylight, and there he was. Todd stood at the end of the walkway, his hands in his pockets, his eyes shining. He looked the same but somehow different, aged perhaps by worry and the wariness that came with the fight for justice. But as soon as he saw her, his face broke into a smile that lit up his whole being. She hurried toward him, their steps quickening until they were close enough to touch. They embraced, holding each other tightly, words unnecessary in the moment. She felt the weight of his arms around her, the warmth she'd longed for, the comfort of his presence. They stayed that way for a long time, until finally, Todd whispered, "Welcome home." Julie chuckled, the sound feeling foreign and joyous all at once. "I'm home," she echoed, savoring every syllable. In the car ride back, Julie looked out the window, watching the world pass by, each familiar landmark stirring memories. She thought about the future, the chance to reclaim her life, to mend the bonds with her children, and rebuild the life they dreamed of. The road ahead would be full of challenges, public scrutiny, family healing, and the journey of piecing their lives back together. But now, with Todd by her side, it seemed more than possible. As they approached their home, Julie felt a surge of emotion. She was ready to step back into her role as a mother, a wife, and most importantly, herself.